Hi there, Heather Prekop, Senior Director with Global CPG here at Euromonitor. Here to speak with Joao, heads our growth and M&A strategy practice out of our London office, and wanted to just get his take on the CAGNY conference that myself and a few of my colleagues attended last week. I think growth strategies is something that was definitely addressed in different ways across different companies in the different industries that we saw last week. And I would like to just nod a bit to the framework that Joao has put together in past to speak to the three pillars of the, different stages of growth. So refocus and streamline, number one, with the likes of, how we saw some of General Mills divestiture and acquisitions to kind of focus on where core is moving forward. Expand and innovate. That's where we saw L'Oreal, Conagra really pulled in external partnerships and how they're leaning into that for building on a future around innovation. And acquire and scale. I think here we really saw acquisitions was a core of what Mondelez was speaking to in their strategy to go into the cakes and pastries area with recent acquisitions around Give and Go in US, Evereth in China, just to name a few examples. But really kind of where this framework came from and to expand further on what the outlook is for H2 of 2025, I'll leave with you, Joao.
Thanks, Heather. So yeah, basically the way we developed this framework was looking at how CPG has evolved and has grown as an industry over the last 2 years, 3 years since the COVID pandemic, right? During the COVID pandemic, of course, there was issues and disruptions in the supply chain, which led to pressures on the cost of bulk of CPG firms. The way to counterbalance that impact, companies then try to pass through price and cost increases to consumers. That enabled them for a while to protect margins at the same time as driving volumes growth. However, this strategy pretty much exhausted in the beginning of 2024 when consumers were faced with persistent inflation, high interest rates, high debt burdens, and that limited the amount of money that they could actually spend, making them less loyal with regards to what brands they're going to buy from and more thinking about which brands they're going to save money from. That, as a result, we saw a number of CPG firms start to report a decline in their overall profit margins, a potential decline in volume sales growth, mainly because they struggle to get the attention and, again, to maintain the loyalty from consumers. Basically, that forced the bulk of the CPG, especially the large ones that plays across a number of categories and segments, to try to focus on streamlining their operations in basically achieving profitable growth. So moving away from a strategy of passing through costs increases to consumers and trying to emphasize a growth in their profitability. We saw companies like Unilever, you see companies like Nestle, you mentioned General Mills, going through that process. Unilever being slightly ahead when you think about it, and Nestle pretty much in the middle of this refocus and streamline strategy with the main goal of cleaning their balance sheets. The reason why that is important is because before they even think about trying to innovate into a new product, trying to launch, tap into a new category or acquire another brand, they need to make sure that the core of their business is strong enough, that their balance sheet is strong enough to sustain that growth for a long period of time. The moment they get that right, then they move into the expand and innovate, which is now we have a strong balance sheet. We're able to achieve profitable growth for the core areas that we play at. So now where we can innovate, where we can expand to. We're not just talking about our organic growth primarily, but expanding maybe to new channels, expanding into new segments through partnerships, through joint ventures. The same thing when it comes to innovation. It's not just about launching a new product, but maybe it's partnering with think tanks, with universities. For example, the case of L'Oreal, investing quite a lot in this space to primarily partner with someone instead of owning and the entire innovation process. They can partner with someone to expedite that cycle. It gives them a greater chance to test and trial an idea before they put it into the market. And again, we're not just talking about expanding innovation in innovating to a new product, but sometimes about reinventing an ingredient, reinventing an element of the manufacturing process of a product. That the third stage post expanding innovation, then it's about acquiring scale, such as the cases mentioned, Mondelez and Coca-Cola, where the stage of we exhausted the options of how we can grow organically, how we can grow based on the brands, based on the capabilities that we currently own. So now it's the stage of we have a strong balance sheet, we have a good cash reserve, we already innovated in the categories that we play at, we are market leaders. Now for us to continue to grow, it's about acquiring new brands, and the strategy of their M&A strategy will vary. It could be focused on specific disruptive brands, or it could be in significant major acquisitions, for example, such as the case of Mars and Kayla Nova on the snack space. So there are a number of ways that companies can go about from expanding to acquiring, but it's all about taking advantage of, particularly in the second half of 2025, as inflation cools down. It's already cooling down in Europe and in parts of Southeast Asia and Latin America. It's still to be seen in the US. Same thing with interest rates, which has a direct implication on the appetite for M&A and valuations. But we are confident that in 2025, in the second half of 2025, we'll see this activity growing. And again, companies gradually entering the acquiring and scale phase. And such as any cycle, over time, they will go back to refocus and streamline. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll go through the same disruptive process as they are going now to reset their strategy, but it's all about let's then, now that we have grown organically and inorganically, where we need to continue to focus, where we might need to move away from, and that process then generates a virtuous cycle of growth.
Great. I think completely relevant to last week's conversation, Joao. Thank you for taking us through that model. And I would say, it is refreshing that focus on growth. Last week we did hear a lot on value creation, affordability, but that, here companies are still moving through those stages of growth with a positive outlook for H2 2025. And again, reminder that things are cyclical in nature. And so I think those are great points, and wanted to thank you for your time, Joao.
Thanks, Heather.